Hello? Oh, now I can hear you. Oh, that's scary. So did you all get that song? Okay, good. I'm just trying to. There's no thing, so there's no clicker. Must be over here. Hang on a second. There we go. I've been looking forward to this presentation for a couple of reasons. One is this is a moment in time where people need to be empowered with an understanding of what the real world is about. Because we just came through a period that was very cloudy and hazy and confused, and they didn't really do a good job of managing messaging. What I want to do is I want to just go back and take a look at where we were when we came through COVID-19, what they were telling us about COVID-19, and then what we've learned since and how that applies to the next pandemic. Because there's another one coming. It's only a matter of time. Some of you have been maybe hearing about the avian flu that jumped cows. Did you hear about that? You guys listen to the news? Well, that's interesting because birds don't generally give viruses to mammals. Okay? But when it makes that jump, it gets into what we call the mammalian pool where we live. Okay? So if it can get to a cow, it can in theory get to other mammals that will get to us. So those sorts of things go on all the time. It's a very dynamic world out there. Very, very dynamic when it comes to these biological challenges that we're confronted with. Viruses, not so much bacteria, but still bacteria, but the viruses are the big bad creatures because they're sneaky and they're programmed to hide and they're programmed to modify themselves. You think AI is a big challenge? Viruses are a bigger challenge, right? You think viruses can think for themselves? Makes you wonder, how do they know that if I throw this little spike, I'm going to do better at connecting to people and infecting everybody? How does it know that? What programming allows it to be able to function like that? We don't know, but we know that it happens. So what I want to do is just look back and then look where we are and then move forward and give you some ideas and help you put some perspective into not only your understanding, but messaging to the population, because the population is confused. The population has been fed so much misinformation and disinformation and confusion about mask yes, mask no, whatever that is, right, that they need help. And we need to prepare for the next one because it's coming. That avian flu virus that jumped to the cow, you know where they found it? They found it in the udders of the cows. These are dairy cows, which means it's into the dairy system. It's in the dairy, milk, and things like that, because the infection occurs in the cow. Now, if you think about that for a moment, that's a holy smoke thought, right? That it would invade all the milk in the country. Luckily enough, we have this thing called pasteurization that will kill those little critters. But a lot of people still like to drink raw milk. Okay? If your cow's living in your backyard and it never gets around any other cows and birds don't fly in or something, you're probably okay. But yeah, we need to be sort of aware of those sorts of things. There's another one going on. You all remember monkeypox? Monkeypox 2 is arriving. And what monkeypox 2 did is it evolved in a fashion that means that the monkeypox 1 treatments we had don't work as well. How did monkeypox know to do that? It more than doubled in the last year, not here, mostly over in Africa. But you know what? Africans get on airplanes and fly here. We go there, do things, come back here. In the global world, the things that used to protect us, distance, geography, used to be a big defense against things like Ebola, for example, because it would burn out in the population before it could get out of its little area. Until they put the Kinshasa Highway right through the middle of Ebola town, right? You could get on the highway, go to the airport 1 hour later, get on a plane, fly to London, wait overnight for 3 or 4 days, fly to LAX, and develop symptoms. That's all what's going on in this world we've got. So anyway, I just want to give you a little perspective. So this is about nutrition and COVID, seeing through the misinformation, there was a lot of it, and preparing for the future. So you remember COVID, right? This is my sort of definition of what happened with COVID. It's a story of okay? If you look at it, we were undersupplied, unorganized, uninformed, unwilling, and unsmart in the way this was handled. Those are all uns, right? And, in March of 2020, it was you don't need masks. By June of 2020, you do need masks. Same guy, what he admitted to downstream was probably considerate of him in the sense that he was afraid that if we all bought masks, there wouldn't be enough for the healthcare workers. That's called unprepared. We had plenty of masks, they just happened to be in China. Because that's where we get all our masks, because we can't make masks here anymore. That's called unprepared. And it's a government that's not thinking about how do we manage on our own, because globalization of the business community is fine, but globalization of the fundamentals that keep us healthy is not, when we're at the mercy of potential adversaries for medication and equipment and chips for our cars and so on and so forth. That's not good strategic planning on the part of our guys and girls. And that's led to this. Think about this. The CDC, in the CDC report, officials knew the coronavirus test kits that they had didn't work, were flawed, but they released them anyway. You know why? Because they didn't want us to think they were unprepared. Because instead of unpreparedness, they say, people will panic, they'll go crazy, they'll be rioting in the streets. So they just said, well, send them out there anyway. Now, what sort of, I try not to get upset, but that's sort of lame thinking as far as I'm concerned. That's putting your reputation ahead of the welfare of the people you're there to serve. Something wrong with that. Okay? And, we had these guys, smart people, who said, well, because the elderly are at greatest risk, let's make all of them get together in one place. That was the governor of the state of New York. Smart decision, right? Well, let's put all of those who are at most risk, let's put them all together with those who are already infected. There should be some sort of punishment for that other than being booted out of office. Anyway, and then you see this other one here. We had these unimaginable shortages. We had no personal protective equipment. Essentially, we burned through it like that. Not because we didn't know we needed it. It was like the respirators, the health department in New York had told the governor, you need 3,000 of these at least. Turned out he had 300. Because he didn't make it the right priority. His thinking was political, and therein lies the rub. The whole thing became very political. And if you see down at the bottom here, we had supply chain disruptions that were unimaginable. Who think we'd run out of toilet paper? I mean, how low-tech is toilet paper? Yet we managed to. And disinfectant wipes, to this day, I think I've got 8 cans of this stuff stuck away in my preparedness kit out here. So all of these things went on. Okay, and I'll give them some credit. It was a big part of the reason why this happened is because they didn't know. They didn't know what the answers were, or how to solve it, or where this thing came from, or what. They were caught up in the political moment as well, and as a result, they made some pretty strange decisions. And I think we need to keep that in mind. Part of this was due to the fact that they were stuck in what I call drug think. Okay? Drug think is they approach everything like a drug. Right? You're going to take this and it's going to do something like that that's going to be a symptom reducer, symptom blocker. Not going to necessarily cure you, but it's going to make you feel better, which is good, but not really what you're looking for. There's this anti-nutrition mindset that comes from the drug think mentality. And that anti-nutrition mindset is because it's not a drug, we're not going to buy into its value or its importance. That we're going to deny huge piles of information that say that your immune status of your immune system is always important no matter what you encounter, and the strength of your immune system is dependent upon the quality of your diet. We've known that for about 50 years, but they refuse to accept that as a viable concern to the point of saying, no, it doesn't make sense. And they gave poor messaging. Look at some of this stuff here. This is Mythbusters from 2020. The Annals of Pharmacotherapy. I want you to remember that. August 5th. Evidence evaluating these supplements in COVID-19 patients is lacking. Okay? And you can see they're talking about vitamin C, vitamin B, zinc, L-glutamine, and so on. So they say evidence is lacking. Then in the next line they say, rather, reference to evidence-based guidelines should guide treatment. Well, you just said there's no evidence. So how can you have evidence-based guidelines without any evidence? You know, I've had trouble with that sort of stuff. That just boggles my mind. Here's another one, debunking the COVID-19 myth. The problem with this one is that it's still in the website there at Mayo Clinic. It says supplements. Many people take vitamin C, zinc, green tea, or echinacea to boost their immune system. But these supplements are unlikely to prevent you from getting sick. Okay, define prevention. You know, prevention is, I got sick for a minute. Didn't really prevent it because I got sick for a minute. Okay, there were a day where it felt like I had a headache. Because a lot of COVID symptoms were pretty mild, so it didn't prevent me from getting a headache. So prevention is, you know, is a relative idea, right? So we need to think those sorts of things through. The fact that this is still in the Mayo Clinic website today was caused me to send him an email. And I said, with all due respect, do you really believe that this is still a valid statement? That's all. I didn't say, you idiots, what are you doing? They're not idiots, they're really bright, smart people. They probably forgot that was in their website. Here's another one, stuck in drug thing. CDC updates guidance for COVID-19, and they say, studies show vitamins don't improve outcomes. Studies. So the population says, oh, they must have millions and millions of studies if they're going to make that claim. There were two studies. These are the studies. One was a Brazilian study. It was published in JAMA in 2021. So the effect of a single high dose of 200,000 IUs of vitamin D3 on hospital length of hospital stay in patients with moderate to severe COVID-19. One time shot of 200,000 IUs of vitamin D, and they went, see, I told you. Didn't change anything. Right? Because that's a drug thing. They think about, oh, if I'm going to give you something, I need to see an immediate reaction. And nutrition isn't that way. Very biodynamic bodies, things have to get in there, get in place. You raise up your nutritional health, and if you don't care for it, it will go back down. Right? It's part of the process. But they get their stuff in drug thing. They say, well, 200,000 IUs of vitamin D, we should be able to measure. That should measure on the Richter scale someplace, right? And it doesn't. Because your body goes, okay. It wants a steady supply of this stuff. It doesn't want 200,000 IUs. Here's another one. A U.S. study, again published in JAMA in 2021. Effect of high-dose zinc and ascorbic acid supplements versus usual care, which they don't define very clearly here, on symptom length and reduction among ambulatory patients with SARS-CoV-2 infection. 214 people, okay, 50 milligrams of zinc gluconate and 8,000 IUs of ascorbic acid for 10 days. And it says in there, they said that a study was stopped early for futility. You know why? Because they didn't see a drug-like response to these nutrients. They didn't say, oh, these people got over. Everybody got better. We gave it to them. Whoa, everybody got better. They didn't see that. And these two studies drove that headline. CDC updates guidance on COVID-19. Studies show vitamins don't improve outcomes, despite the fact that we know for 50 years that the status of your diet and the status of vitamins and minerals in particular, which are all essential in your diet, determines how well your immune systems function. These two studies caused them to make that headline. Not that that's not true, I suppose, those two studies said that, but it's not valid. It doesn't have meaning against all of the other data that's out there. You don't be giving people guidance on that sort of stuff. It would be like, us going up to somebody and say, here, take this product, and I feel like your immune system got better. Yes. You'd say 100% of people who took this product got a big boost of immune function. Well, it's only one person, but it would be 100%. Nothing wrong with that. Right? So, that's where we were. So the problem with drugthink is this. What about tomorrow? Because they're looking at what's going on right at this moment. And COVID SARS-2 is dynamic. It's not like a target going across in an arcade where you can pop it off. It comes by every time. It's very dynamic. It's changing and mutating and finding new and tricky ways to do things that we find difficult taking care of. Even our immune systems are difficult taking care of. So we have to think of it in the context that, if it didn't work today in that one or two tests that they did, what does the preponderance of data say about the relationship between the strength of your immune system and your probability of surviving a viral attack? Well, we know what that is. We know from all the other viruses that we've encountered in the past that those with the strongest immune system survive the best. Okay? And age is a factor that old people with strong immune systems do better than old people with weak immune systems. Yeah. We've known this for a long time. So what do we know now? This is what you need to know. Okay, so this is looking back. Nutritional supplements for managing COVID-19. This is from the U.S. pharmacist. Remember, the first one was a pharmacotherapy group. This is another publication, U.S. pharmacist. It says, I'll just read the highlighted stuff. It's a supplementation with C and E and quercetin and zinc and melatonin have been reported to be potentially beneficial for infectious disease, as these nutrients help regulate the immune system and may be useful in COVID-19 management as preventive therapy for lung infection. If you remember, a lot of people got onto respirators because it was in the lungs, right? So what they went around all the way around to say is that stuff works. Right? They potentially maybe that's if they do that so they can not get held accountable for will. So that's one example. And down in there they cite proper nutrition is critically important for a strong immune system. So they know this. It's not like they invented that in the last couple of weeks. Here's another one. What you need to know. This is the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on nutritional status and feeding patients. These are young infants. Kids get this stuff too, not very often because they tend to be a low-risk group, but in lower middle-income countries it was a bigger deal because they don't have a healthy immune system. It says research has shown that patients are at high risk of developing malnutrition during acute COVID illness. So if they come in already malnourished with malnutrition and then they get the disease, it just amplifies that. And it goes on to say the malnutrition associated with COVID infection is multifactorial, meaning that you can get malnutrition because you didn't have a good diet or you did have a good diet. But children in particular need to worry about their immune system. They go on to say correlation analysis between nutritional status and prognosis for COVID-19 patients. This is from the Journal of Healthy Aging. Their conclusion in this very long study was that COVID-19 patients with good nutritional status showed a small chance to have adverse outcomes. Now, we knew that was true. We had 320 million people, 3 million died. Do the math. What, 1/10 of 1%? That's a lot. I'm not belittling those deaths. But the math says that 99.9% didn't have a fatal thing happen. Right? Did not have a fatal thing happen. So to give you some perspective, that's a claim that they make on sprays for killing viruses in your house. Kills 99.99% of all the bacteria and viruses on contact surfaces. You know that. That means that there's a lot that survive. But in this particular case, that small chance is exactly what we were hearing from people who believed in what the research had said leading up to 2019, that people who have the strongest immune system, especially if you're young and healthy and don't have comorbidities, are going to survive quite well, have a strong chance of doing it. These are things that you need to know. You need to understand this, right? The evaluation of the relationship between nutritional status of COVID-19 patients admitted to the ICU and patient prognosis, a cohort study. This is from the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism. The conclusion was, in critical care settings, that's where people are already sick, COVID-19 patients, malnutrition is prevalent when they got there. Malnutrition, nutritional risk, is associated with an increased risk of need for mechanical ventilation and hospital mortality. So when these people showed up malnourished, they already had diagnosed malnutrition, that put them at much greater risk because it compromised their immune function. People who didn't have malnutrition didn't fall into this group because their immune system was not compromised. Here's another one. Influence of nutritional status on clinical outcomes among hospitalized patients with COVID-19. It says, this is from Clinical Nutrition in Europe. The presence of poor nutritional status is related to the longer stay in hospital, greater admission to the ICU, and higher mortality. Okay, so people who ended up in hospital, it doesn't matter what age they are, right, who had compromised nutritional status, were at much greater risk of dying, no matter what age it was again. If you were in that, if you were described as that, being malnourished, undernourished, then you were at risk. Reality is, the data showed that that was the case. Here's something that starts to get a little more focus. This is protective effect of vitamin D supplementation on COVID-related intensive care hospitalizations and mortality. Definitive evidence from meta-analysis and trial sequential analysis. That means post studies they did after, in sequence after the event. Says the result of the meta-analyses and prospective TSAs, trial sequential analysis, suggests a definitive association between the protective role of vitamin D and ICU hospitalizations. Now, if you remember when people were saying, well, we should take vitamin D, but we should take vitamin D, they said, no, it isn't going to do you any good. Wrong. Okay? It isn't going to do you any harm either. But the chances are, because vitamin D plays such an important role in your immune function, the chances are it's going to be beneficial. So if I'm in there today and I go to the doctor and I get sick and I feel better and I go home and they send me home with a message that vitamin D is important, what do you think it did for the next time a COVID mutant comes along? A variant comes along. It's just a little twist. Is my body ready? No, it's no more ready than it was before I went in there. Maybe even less, because it might have compromised. So in a dynamic viral world, that would not be the message you would want to send people out of the hospital with. If they survived, you would say, and they were vitamin D deficient, you would say, go home and take some vitamin D right now. Go lay in the sun right now. Don't go back to work. Get into this vitamin D boosting therapy of some sort. That was what you would hope that they would say. But I don't think, did any of you hear that message coming out? I didn't. Think about that for a moment. How can they not take the time to say, hey, by the way, we were a little misinforming you about vitamin D and its importance. You should really go home and make sure your vitamin, we did a test and your vitamin D's a little low. Go home and boost that. But then they would have to admit that they were wrong, and some of these people and organizations don't like to take responsibility for this heritage. So it says the result of meta-analysis, it is protected. Here's another one. Low serum levels of zinc and vitamin D, the 25-hydroxy-D is just the way it appears in the bloodstream, so they call it serum levels, as potential risk factors for COVID susceptibility. A pilot case control study from Nature, the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, it says low serum zinc and 25-hydroxy-D levels appear to be a risk factor for COVID-19 affliction. Whoa! It's a risk factor. So if your vitamin D and zinc are low, that's a risk factor. You're more likely to get COVID-19. The other side of that is, of course, if your vitamin D and zinc factors are high, if the risk factors are low. Why don't they just tell us that? Because before they were saying, no, you don't need zinc and vitamin D and stuff like that. It's too late. It's not. It's never too late. It doesn't make any sense. There's always tomorrow. If I take it today, I'm better tomorrow. If I take it tomorrow, I'll be better the next day. This is not rocket science, okay? Very simple biological systems. The system needs it, and when it's not there, it becomes a problem. But think about that. A risk factor for COVID-19 affliction. That means getting the disease. Here's another one. This is in Nature. Nutrition and immunity, lessons from COVID-19. The immune impairments associated with nutritional inadequacies, they don't like to call them deficiencies because it sounds like the government's not doing their job. Inadequacies increase susceptibility to infection and permit infections to become more severe and even fatal. So this is the stuff that they were telling us wasn't important in 2019. By 2021, they're saying, oh, wait a minute. But they didn't. The newspapers, nobody blasted this from the headlines, did they? You know, that's who's in charge? Why not? There's no downside to this. You know, there's not the profit margins in these things that the pharmaceutical industry is used to. Okay, but they're not drugs. So get over it. So it goes on to say, studies of individual micronutrients, including vitamin D and zinc, suggest roles in reducing severity of infections. So not only did they inhibit the likelihood that you'll get infected, if you do, they'll reduce the severity. Remember my 1 hour headache? Crazy, huh? Another thing you need to know, the role of nutrition in mitigating. Now, mitigating means correcting, getting over, curing, getting rid of the effects of COVID-19 from infection through PACS, which is the day afterwards. That's the sort of long COVID thing they're talking about. Individuals with chronic or acute over or undernutrition. Overnutrition means that you're eating too many calories, too much bad stuff, not enough good stuff, and undernutrition means you're not getting basic nutrients that you need, are at increased risk of contracting viral infections, and once infected are at greater risk of developing more severe symptoms. We do that in 1975, 80, 90. We didn't need this to be able to write that statement. It goes on to say, in addition, many of the underlying health conditions that increase the risk for COVID-19 are obesity, weakened immune system, impaired metabolic health, chronic diseases. So was it news to them that we have a chronic disease epidemic going on here? Those are the comorbidities that they thought. They didn't like to call them chronic diseases, because that meant that they played too much into the narrative that was going on in the health community. So they call them comorbidities. But that's what they're talking about. So whenever you have chronic disease, you have a greater challenge in maximizing the potential for your health. Just the way it is. But they point to this as something new and revolutionary. It just got published in the journal Nature. Okay? The role of nutrition in the treatment. Uh-oh. We can't treat disease with nutrients, can we? Didn't somebody in 1937 write a law that says you can't treat or mitigate disease? It's called the Food and Drug Act. Nutrition plays a crucial role in immune function and metabolic health. Okay, we do that, right? We've been telling people that for decades. And therefore, it is believed to have an impact on reducing the risk or severity of symptoms of both COVID-19 and long COVID. Oh boy. Why aren't they telling us that? Why does the public have to remain uninformed? Because the messengers are being told by the establishment that don't send that because it will make us look bad. It will make us look unprepared, uninformed, unwilling, all of those things. It will make us look right? So this is 2024. I put this one in here because this was like last week. Actually, it's June. It was pre-published last week. We get pre-publication at the SAB. We get to see a lot of articles before they actually make it to print, as we go through the review processes. So in this case, it's headed for print in June, but I brought it on my desk last week. And I went through there and said, how timely, I'm doing a presentation, I'll put it in. Thank you very much. But again, nutrition plays a crucial role in immune function. We knew that. And metabolic health, we knew this is not new. And therefore, is believed to have an impact on reducing the risk of any disease, by the way, any disease, not just COVID-19, or severity of symptoms in any disease, for both COVID-19 and long COVID. So, I get a little uppity and irritated about this stuff simply because we pay these people a lot of money to be the champions of our nutritional health, right? That means they should be out there on the stallion giving us all the latest information and telling us everything we need to know to stay up on this, and gosh. So, what you need to do, you need to realize that the next pandemic is coming. Tell people. You really need to realize that COVID-19 is not over. It's still here and it's still mutating. There's a new viral variant coming along through the system. We track these through epidemiology databases all over the world. New viruses and variants are already among us. Some of them are not very virulent, luckily. Some of them don't get an opportunity. Remember, your immune strength is nutrition dependent, okay? And that all deficiencies and inadequacies, not just zinc and vitamin C and stuff like that, all deficiencies and inadequacies in nutrition diminish immunity and increase your risk. We focus on zinc and vitamin D because they're pretty easy to focus on. You can throw vitamin C in that picture as well. So you need to know these things. You need to not wait. Don't wait. It's too late. It'll help you, but why not just prevent it in the first place? Take some action now, and don't let nutritional unpreparedness get you. You can see I took vitamin D and zinc in there, and I included carotenoids because even though they didn't mention it in the studies, we do have clinical evidence that shows that carotenoid complex will boost your immune system, and I like clinical evidence. Thanks very much.